Welcome. We are live. We're live, and I have Joel Froomkin here. And this is a bizarre, fantastic day. I'm really excited about this because we have a great guest. And Johnny's sick, and Johnny's friends with the gentleman who was going to be on earlier. And so Terry will be back because those two have been friends for 15, I don't know, a long time, over a decade. And so Joel was gracious enough. Just talked to him an hour and a half ago, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so at the last second, we're doing sound checks and video checks, and we're checking things, and we're doing everything last second. I redid all the publicity, went back, and anyway, we've had a great time. So Joel, thank you for being so nice and joining us
Oh my
today.
gosh.
And I know you've been doing some cool stuff, so I'm excited to talk to you today. How have you been?
Good, good. I'm like so delighted to be here. No, it's so cool of you to ask me. I feel like I should sort of be like in Johnny clothes. I should be wearing like a little vest and like little fun shoes. But
Well,
since I'm
I
as
think,
an understudy,
well, we both heard Johnny obviously voices for a living. So
oh,
when he calls me today and he sounds like death warmed over, I'm like,
it was
wow,
bad. It was bad.
you are, yeah. It's very unusual because normally he's so outgoing and he sounds
Yeah.
great and we have a good time and we're laughing. He did not joke once with me this morning. It was like, and I just said, listen, we'll see you another day. So we're here. We're gonna have a blast, Joel. I think, and first off, I do remember when we coached together the first time, meaning about 4 years ago, we met at the New England Narrators Retreat. But we had met a few years before that. I think we go back 6, 8 years.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're one of the guys like me. We were young in the business a decade
You
ago.
you taught me to punch and roll.
Oh, okay. Well, and I don't want to, like I don't remember that. I don't. I remember you. I just don't. The time frame of it is
Yeah.
it's definitely a long time ago, and super cool. And the business has changed so much since we started. There wasn't the groups. I think there were like 300 people in the group today that has 10,000 people in it when
It's
we started.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then now, and you've become a real big deal since then. I mean, you're very well known, and you've got all these cool things. I look at your list of credits for what publishers you've been with, and it's like, geez, anybody, any publisher in the world is happy to have you on their roster doing things for them. So that's hats off to you because that is not simple to first get into that club. Second, to expand it to where you're doing things across quite a few publishers. And so tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get started in this thing? Because I know you used to work at, I think it was Walmart, and then you started doing voicing for no, where, how'd you get started in this narration world?
Um, my whole background was in performance and directing. My undergrad was in performance, my master's was in directing and design. And at one point, my delightful husband, Rich, who everybody from New England knows, we decided to start a theater company because we had produced a show. Um, we produced a couple, but we'd done, for instance, we did a play with Charles Shaughnessy, who's Mr. Sheffield on The Nanny, and Judy Kuhn, who's the voice of Pocahontas and a million other things. And we really liked producing. And we were like, we feel like we're good at this. We like putting on stuff ourselves and controlling our own product. And we were like, we're going to start a theater company. And we went all over the Eastern Seaboard and looked for a place to start a theater. And then randomly, we were in Indiana and found a 100-year-old vaudeville building. And for 10 years, we worked at that. And Rich did an amazing job renovating it. He turned it into a beautiful space. We killed ourselves. We were really proud of the shows we were doing. But Indiana, for two gay guys doing musical theater, was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough, and we sort of reached a point where we needed to sort of pivot, and the theater we just knew wasn't gonna sustain itself with the audience we could reach because of who we were, because of where we were. Um,
It was a different
and
time then too, a little
it
bit.
was
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I needed to pivot, and a friend of mine named Beverly Crick, who is I've known since I was like 16, is also from Bermuda, or also grew up in Bermuda, and also like me, therefore she is a UK American hybrid. Um, and she said you should try this, and she's a very successful narrator. She never goes to events. She's very kind of like the Greta Garbo of audiobooks, but she does tons and tons and tons of Regency romance, lots of Harlequin, that kind of stuff. And she said, I think you'd be really good at this because she knew my background as a dialect coach. She knew I was a character person. She knew, my shtick. And within 3 months, I was full. I went on ACX. Within 3 months, I was full time. I was very, very lucky.
Well,
And
yeah. Okay. 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 I got to stop you right there. You were very lucky that you happened to have all this preparation, which gave you the skill set and the background to do this so that you could walk in and then 3 months later be able to go full time. But that's not because of you decided one day, wow, I bet I have a good voice. I think I will go do this narration thing. It's you do a decade of prep work, and before that, you were doing theater and acting, and you were already doing characters. And so you found something right in your wheelhouse that fits with all the background you already have. So it's kind of an overnight sensation based on being prepared for this whole thing to come about. Is that even close?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I was an audiobook nut. I did love the art form. And so, but what I do want to say is that I think people hear things like, oh, within 3 months I was in full time and I was working for publishers pretty quickly. I was very lucky. But here's the thing. When you see people, what I call kind of, jump the line, when you see people get really lucky and get with publishers like their first book or really straight out of the gate, it's usually because they have something that they need.
Right.
It's not about talent, it's not about ability, it's because in that moment somebody is a solution to a problem and they have the goods to back it up. And the reality was that um I am able to switch authentically between British and American, which means I have double the amount of workload that first person, which means I automatically have double the available workload most people can do.
Right.
There are a lot of very specific kinds of titles I can do. And also at the time, 7 years ago, I think when I started, they were not casting a lot of Australians from Australia. They were casting people sort of more stateside.
Right.
And I was also getting a lot of Australian books, which now doesn't happen hardly at all. Like they're casting Australians now, which is, understandable. Like authenticity is great. But I happened to have, you're right, because I put the work in, but because I was a dialect coach, because I had a background as a director and could think self-directing, that was in my DNA. Um, I put in the work. I studied with people to learn the specifics of this art form. I didn't come into it going, I know what this is. I've got a degree in acting. Because I think that also is something people really need to hear is, you know, even if you have no background, you need to coach. And if you got a shit ton of background, but not in audiobooks, you still need to learn this kind of acting.
Yeah.
And I was willing to do that work. But yeah, I was lucky. I had stuff that made me useful to them, and I was able to be a solution to a lot of things. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, and then I know since then you have continued to, first off, I knew you when you were going, you've always gone and see, you were working with coaches. You've always been doing that. And I always find this bizarre thing. Almost all the best coaches in the world also get coaching, or
Oh
they're
yeah.
on, or they're at events where they're around other great coaches. And what I see them doing is going and sneaking in the back of other people's sessions because they're like, well, how does Johnny approach this? You may have a way of doing it that's just as authentic or just as valuable, but you still go check out all the other coaches to find if that one little thing that can add to your bag of tricks, the what you know, how you approach things. And you're one of those guys that has always been around where you're a little sponge out there finding things that even though you know a ton, you're constantly finding ways to increase that. Now, if someone's new today and coming into it and they don't have an acting background, should they give up?
No, no, not at all. And that's what my class is, and we'll get there. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But my class is specifically designed to give people the equivalent of university acting training, with an audiobook lens because they don't have that opportunity. And it doesn't mean that they don't have raw talent. It doesn't mean they don't have the chutzpah. It doesn't mean that they don't have the voice or the skill or the kind of diamond in the rough, but they've got to learn the tools that other actors have that in this particular art form we need more than any. Most actors are having to worry about one role at a time,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like
Right.
if you go to Juilliard, you're not learning to juggle 40 characters and a narrator voice and connect to all of those in a split second without, having to stop and go, who am I now? Let me spray the perfume I associate with this character and all that and put on this costume and have these props. We get zip to work with. And so I really consider it the hardest acting job there is out there. Um, and so, I was very passionate about coming up with a way to give people those tools without spending $250,000 on going to an acting school for 4 years
Right.
and then starting their first audiobook,
Right.
which would be crazy. So okay, I'm going to turn the tables on you. I want to know, how did you become the guy? How did you become, like, what is your journey with sort of becoming like the Studio One guru? How did you become the person everybody goes, not only is Don Baarns the nicest man alive, he is the smartest man alive when it comes to helping people who feel utterly lost with what is this? How does this all work? How do I make noise?
Yeah, but I'm like you. I had some of the best mentors in the world. Everyone who's known me knows I've talked about this gentleman named Gene Stewart, who's passed, but was my mentor when I was 14. I got lucky and got a Motown session player who had gone to Juilliard, who was highly educated, who hated teaching beginners, and he taught me to teach his beginners. And if they would last with me for 6 months, they could pass on to him. But that meant he wanted me to teach a specific way. He was my mentor. And then at the end of the day, I would take my lesson. So I just fell into a situation, total luck, the way it worked out, where I got this gentleman. And he wanted me to be a good coach and a good teacher because he wanted those people who survived that first young drummers, by the way, we're a bunch of nutcases. And I want to play fun music, but I don't want to practice. And I certainly don't want to work on the fundamentals as a 14-year-old. I almost quit him 2 months into it. So almost all the good things I do when it comes to coaching and teaching and come from a gentleman named Gene Stewart, who was my mentor. I didn't know even what that word meant at the time, but he taught me, he taught me to ask questions and to try to create, and the same thing that you do. You see a problem out there and you can do two things. You can call Johnny Heller and say, how would you solve this problem? And that's an excellent approach to do. But the parallel that needs to happen for almost all of us is, first, how do I think I could solve this? And then I go get some other people's input as well. And you're doing both all the time. And I would go, I can't do this certain thing. And he'd stop and he'd say, well, how do you think you should break that down? And he was always asking questions rather than telling me what to do and trying to
Mm-hmm.
get me to solve my own problems and then how to help. And then it also turned out, as a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, I'm teaching people that are 20 to 40 that are starting to do this. And it's a weird thing being a 15-year-old and having a 30-year-old, because man, I thought they were old at that point. Uh, so how do you respectfully work with an adult when you are not, and find a way to have them be comfortable with you? I can't act like I know it all. That doesn't
Yep.
work, you know? So a lot of what I did came out of, this gentleman. And yes, Lisa. Okay. So my wife's telling me I'm not loud enough. So it is always funny. Which she doesn't tell me at home. Why does she tell me that at the dinner table? So anyway, um, anyway, I always have people out there, mentors and side coaches. And here's the interesting thing. Self-monitoring's a bear. And I played music for a living as a young guy, and I was around some world-class musicians, and I worked in some recording studios. And so I kind of came into this thing thinking, oh, this will be easy. How hard could one voice be when you've had 40 mics that are going all the time? And the reality is, it's just a different focus. It's like what you say, being a great actor doesn't mean you know how to act for audiobooks. I cut master records when I was a young guy. I learned how to do that at a ex-Motown studio. So I knew a ton about recording and listening, and they taught me to start listening to things. And then I ended up with a weird thing where I thought I knew a lot when I started the audiobook business. And I think recording audiobooks is some of the toughest recording that's out there for engineers
Yeah.
because they have a music background. It's like a stage actor who comes into audiobooks. You have a great foundation. You know a bunch of things that somebody new doesn't know, but what you don't know are the specifics to this genre. And not you, but what somebody new doesn't know if they already have an acting background.
Exactly.
And I had a recording background. And so when my adult son, Donnie, got me involved with this whole thing, he knew his wife had a theater background. My wife had a theater background. His mom, I think that's what he calls her. He knew that she knew theater. He knew I knew recording. And then I just had to transfer. And it took me a couple years to figure out the details for how to record for specifically voiceover, single voice, no background. And the music people come in thinking, oh, this will be easy. And then there's a bunch of issues. So anyway, I'm like you. I'm a sponge. I'm constantly learning.
I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I
Oh,
I feed off, having people that inspire me, and I think that is kind of what makes a great coach. I think a great coach is somebody who loves to learn,
yep.
because if they love to learn, they've assimilated through their life ways to communicate that register.
Yeah.
They've learned. They're not in their own bubble of, well, I know it, and I'll just tell you, well, just do it right, don't suck or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, kind of one of the things. One of the reasons why I love the class so much is that before we had acting for audio out there, and we've now had like 200 people come through it. It's crazy, like it's amazing, and like they've won Sovas and Audis and won Voice Awards. It's ridiculous. I'm so proud of the class and the students, but before that, there was kind of like a gatekeeping. Do you know what I mean? Because you might go to a
Right.
coach and like, how is a coach in an hour or a couple of hours going to teach you what an actor does as a process? How are they going to teach you those tools and then say, okay, now you've got the tools, you got to do this in audiobooks? I mean, my class is 45 hours of shit,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And if you think about trying to hire a coach for 45 hours, you're going to go broke.
Yeah.
And so I'm really proud of the fact that we put something out there that takes people with the passion, that have raw talent and ability, but don't know how to codify that into sustaining, creating characters, connecting to the text, how to not sound like you're reading and live in the moment, how to think like an actor. And then, what is audio as an art? What do listeners expect? What do publishers expect? What is unique about being inside someone's head as opposed to having like, I think of the listener as your scene partner, right? What's different about that as opposed to any other kind of acting where your scene partner, even in a movie, your scene partner's here, tight, in a tight medium shot, your scene partner's here,
Right.
not here.
Right.
And that's a different kind of acting, So I'm proud of the fact that I sort of we even the playing field, I hope, now for people. So
So you also are doing something that you started a couple of years ago, and I always get it messed up. Voices at Sea. What is it really called? There's something
it's
like that.
it's audiobooks at sea,
Audio.
which works really well to like the pigs in space theme. I always go like audiobooks at sea, like pigs in space. But no, we get like.
What gave you that idea though? Why in the world at sea? Why didn't you do on Mars or on?
Well, no, it's really, that's a great question. So Rich and I never thought we would like cruising. And because we're Disney gays, our first cruise, I think, was a Disney cruise. And then we got addicted, and his mom started to like to cruise, and we started doing it with her. And we sort of realized, like, it's so it's everything is there. The entertainment is there. The resort experience is there. The food is there. It's like a one-stop shop of relax and let someone else worry about shit. And I have a really hard time not working. And Rich realized that the only time he could get me to not be I should be recording a book. I should be doing something. I should be working, right? Was to actually literally put me on a boat. And so we started to really make it part of our life, as putting little spots where we would go do it and make Joel stop. And then we realized they had conference centers. And, for me, a lot of the time when you go to certain events, or like conferences or like book conferences and stuff, you're stuck at like an airport Hilton in Sheboygan.
Right.
And, there's after the sessions during the day, no matter how great the sessions are, you're kind of like, okay, now we're stuck. And you can go to Applebee's, and the hotel bar drinks cost, $14 for a Coke. And and you're kind of stuck, even if you're with other people. And so we were like, well, what we could combine, we discovered the conference spaces. We were like, we can combine educational with like a complete resort experience. And
Right.
then plus we can go on adventures with our friends and go fucking parasailing in Belize or whatever the fuck you want to do. And, and it suits introverts. There's always quiet spaces to go. It suits the extroverts. The entertainment's there. Like, it is such for me, if you add up, like, okay, cost of the hotel, cost of the drinks, cost of buying your friends drinks, cost of buying your coach's drinks, because or the publisher's drinks, because you're like, oh, I want to make sure I buy, such and such from McGillicuddy Publishing, a scotch or whatever. And plus
The
plus
travel.
all that. And, you know, this, when you look at cruising, it is such an economical form of getting so much shit in one package and not having to make choices.
Right.
And I love that. Like, because of that, you kind of breathe. And we did it last year for the first time. People went nuts. We had 80 people last year, and all the publishers and coaches that we bring. And unfortunately, Joanna absolutely hates to get on water,
Yeah.
which is why Johnny couldn't join us, because he's not going to leave Joanna behind. And people just loved it. They loved the camaraderie. They loved they love getting to coach with the publishers. They love the fact that there's no, like when you're at APAC, right? If you get 30 seconds with a publisher,
Right.
you feel good.
Yeah.
This is, you're having dinner with them every night. You're sitting with them, and like 6 days. We're with these people for 6 days. You form relationships, you form a bond. You're with them. You go on a, kayak, not a kayak, you go on a catamaran with them. Last year, people went on a catamaran with Eric Black and from Dreamscape and had a blast. So I think it's just a very different. We didn't want to we didn't want to steal anybody else's thunder. We didn't want to do the same thing anybody else was doing. So we like that this is not on land,
Right.
because if we were doing it on land, other people do that and do it really well. And what is different? And we wanted to do something different that's like, okay, the scenery changes every day, and there's entertainment. And tonight we go see some trapeze guy spinning around to Elton John music. Who the fuck knows? So, we like the difference of it, and I'm really proud of it.
Well, you should be. You get. Well, I will say this. So, since I didn't go last year, the reviews you get off of it are incredible. I mean, people absolutely love it, and so you whatever you're doing the right thing, and there is magic in being around those publishers. You go to APAC, you go to VO Atlanta. We should talk about that in a second. You get some time with somebody, but they meet 400 people in the course of 2 days, and they don't remember any of them, frankly. And then when you contact them, the odds of them remembering me when they just met 400 or 600 people are not all that high. And even if they do, they're going to forget about me in about 3 days when 100 of those people contact them. And so it's about having a relationship with somebody where when you contact them, they go, oh, I know who Joel is. Yeah. And they pay attention. And then when something comes up, those publishers are going to go, ah, there's this guy I met named Joel. I got to go find him again. And
Yeah.
then, they put two and two together. And now all of a sudden that relationship becomes a business relationship as well. And once it gets started, that's a big, big win. So people don't understand how relational this whole business is. Have you found anything similar for you?
Um, I mean, do you mean in terms of like events? Ask me again. Like
Yeah.
what?
So when you're at events, I find that people
Oh,
never
yeah,
remember me without
yeah.
having that kind of personal, we did
And
lunch
that's
where, you
And
know,
that's why your first APAC, you kind of is a your first APAC is a throwaway. You're kinda like, "Oh my god, what's happening? Ah, people, I'm gonna die." And then it's over time. I mean, this business is absolutely over time. I think every narrator you probably admire would say, "Oh yeah, it took me 3 years of knowing that guy for them to
right,
send me work." And this is just a way of creating relationships. And we also have our publishers are also coaching people. They're working directly with them. But we are very clear with those publishers and very clear with the actors on board to think of it as this is not an audition.
right,
This is that publisher is working with you to try and make you even more what they're looking for. They are there to lift you up. They are not there to judge. They are there for you versus an audition where the psychology is you're there for them. Do you know what
right,
I mean?
right, right,
So
right.
we really try and hold that in their heads. But no, I think that I think it's different. I think it's fun. I'm very proud of it. And
Well,
we leave in 12 days. Jesus. I've
uh,
got so
Chris has an interesting question. In interactions with fiction authors, how do you talk to them about setting realistic expectations when they have so many different character voices, maybe, 10 or more? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think my first answer is it depends on the genre.
Um,
Um, and if
Say
you're
that again.
talking
You got
about
cut
like,
off
oh, did I?
there. We had a technical difficulty on our end. Say that again.
Oh, okay. I would say it depends on the genre. And if you're doing like a lit RPG title, they expect 42 voices and the audience expects 42 voices. If you're doing a lit fic title, it's a different kind of expectation from that audience, and it can be a more focused capturing the energy and the psychology of the character rather than creating a complete sort of cinematic vocal experience. And different genres have different thresholds and expectations. I think that's important. And what goes with that is if you're not a character guy or character woman or person or whatever, and you audition for a fantasy book that's 500 pages long and has 40 characters, maybe you shouldn't audition for that book. And I think that that's something that happens when we start out. We go, there's an audition there. I'm going to try that. We throw spaghetti against a wall. And what happens when you're coming through the ranks of ACX, it's kind of like doing summer stock as an actor when you're younger. You end up playing, Big Daddy in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof when you're 20 years old and they stick you in a fat suit and you're, from Minnesota. But so you're doing stuff you shouldn't necessarily do, but you've got to. And when you're starting off on ACX, I think that can happen for people. And they're so eager to book a job,
Right.
they don't necessarily they're not necessarily effective as their own agent and making sure they're booking the kind of jobs they should do. Like I'll hear people be like, I'll have students message me and be like, I just got cast in this first person British book. What the hell do I do? And I'm like, well, the answer is you don't audition or you say no to the first person British book because you're going to get murdered in reviews. So if the reality is for a lot of us that sustain certain kinds of genre, 10 characters is a nice day of work.
Yeah.
That's not scary. But what you do is you build up your character toolbox. I I am very I teach a whole we do 2 weeks of character in my class. I also teach a thing called Laban, which is about character creation and connecting to the visceral energy of a character and how that connects to psychology and voice. You can do animal work, you can think of musical instruments, but I always celebrity cast. If I don't celebrity cast it, I'm not working specifically. If I go, that guy's Jeff Goldblum, that guy's
Tom Hanks or
Tom Hanks, that guy's, Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson's a bad example because it's such a specific vocal type and people can lean into impressions. But like Walken is a bad one to do because once you start doing Walken, people go, oh, he's doing Walken. But if I'm like capturing the energy of Jeff Goldblum or whatever, if it helps you go really specifically, there's the energy of that character. It's not about copying a voice. It's about connecting to what's their particular kind of, what's the magic, the aura that they bring in the room, and that taps in for you. If I tell you someone is Felicia Rashad versus Niecy Nash, you're never going to get those voices confused. You're never going to think of them as the same character. And your body starts changing. But my best advice is stop acting from the neck up. When you're doing character, you feel it in your toes and you feel it in your whole body, and that's how you start inhabiting. It's not about doing a voice, it's about becoming a different person. And really, like, another great exercise, this is a Pat Fraley exercise. Turn on the TV. I mean, a lot of people don't have cable anymore. Turn on the TV, press record on your memo recorder on your phone, and mimic whoever comes on for 30 seconds. Change the channel. Mimic whoever comes on for 30 seconds. Do it for like 5 minutes. Play it back. And you'll be like, oh, that's a rhythm and a cadence I never thought about. And it's very clever. And I really credit Pat for that one. But there's, it's author expectation. Sometimes I've had students come to me and say the author wants no voices. And the author is not someone who listens to audio. And you've got to go back to them and say, this is this kind of book. The audience wants this. You may be fearful of letting go of what was in your imagination. Give me more stuff. Before I start recording, I ask authors for so much shit about characters when I have access to them. And I want if it's an elevator operator with 2 lines, I want their fucking life story. And that really can help me and feel confident about what the author wants. So then they're not going, oh God, that's not Susan's voice. And usually when you find an author afraid of character, it's because they're not trusting.
right.
But know your limitations, and then build up more of your toolbox and expand those limitations.
Now,
And
do I
you'll
understand you? Can you expand on this where you were talking about most of these expectations with an author? You need to go through all this stuff up front before you record, because if you do it afterward, like, so I come back to you and I go, I don't like the way you voiced Winnie the Pooh here. And you go, well, you're an idiot. That would be the right answer to begin with if it was me telling you that, because you'd say, but if you give me a reason why you voiced it a certain way and you actually did it right, quote unquote, or you did a great job with it. If you say it afterward, now it sounds like you're just trying to get out of work.
absolutely. No. You do all the I want all this shit before I prep.
Okay.
Because I want to be looking at the author's notes and from line 1 seeing what's in their imagination. And sometimes you go back to them and you go, did you think when you told me Ryan Reynolds, who talks up here, and then this character you say has a deep growly voice like like their
John Wayne.
yeah. Can we figure out a better choice that's going to meet what the text demands?
You,
And sometimes the author forgets what the text demands. But yeah, you ask for it all up front. And then I consider it my insurance policy. I've got fucking imposter syndrome. I want the author to like it. And the more shit I have of what they want, the better I'm going to feel.
Now, sometimes I think though I think of it almost as the opposite, where you go in as long as you need to set the expectations up front, but also the reality is you're the artist, and I want to trust you, and so if my wife's doing something, I want her authors to actually go, you know what, she has a vested interest. She wants this to be great. And I want them to take her input sometimes because she'll pick things, and narrators have a very specific voice. I'm writing a book. I imagine my character is Joel, and you're my character, and I hear your voice. And somebody does, somebody else just slightly different, and I'm like, oh, but that's not the voice I had. And I realize, you know what? When people read this in print, they put their own accent, and their Joel was not my
E-
Joel.
Exactly.
And the book still was fantastic, or it was crap. It wasn't because I
Yeah.
put the right Joel, but so I always see you great actors. I don't want to say you don't need the author's input. It's nice to have it, and I like that you like to find things that you can give them that they like. But I also realize you are 10 times more likely to find the right voices for the right character, because that's what you do. They heard the Joel they knew from second grade or
And when you're with a publisher, you don't get the luxury of that contact anyway. You
okay.
have to become self-sufficient.
All right.
You don't get contact with them. Somebody's saying that I hear sometimes the example of Jurassic Park audiobook where the character voices are not very different, but the performance separates them beautifully. You're probably talking about Scott Brick's version of Jurassic Park, I imagine, because I know he's very well known for doing that. And Scott is quite well known as his sort of brand is changing energy of character rather than vocal manipulation as a vocal chameleon. And that's Scott's thing. I mean, first of all, when you've got Scott Brick's voice, it's a pretty fucking great voice to start with. So you've got a really nice neutral to work to start
Can
from.
can you show
But
us the difference on that? Can I put you on the spot? What would the difference be if you were reading something with a Scott Brick flavor versus
um okay, give
is
me
that
no, I
rude? You like how
no,
rude I am?
it's a little rude, but give me a second. I think I can find
Because I don't think everybody's really so Scott does such a it's a different feel than the way somebody who's really into dialects will do very different characters. Scots are closer together from a vocal point of view, but they have a different feel.
I'm literally I'm Rich, if you're there, if you're listening, I'm trying to find the Jurassic Park final scene, and I'm trying to because I literally do this in class. I give people a final scene from Jurassic Park, but I'm trying to find it. Final
Oh,
class.
all right, well that's okay. You know.
But what happens is I use a term called emotional bandwidth,
Mhm.
which is also a musical bandwidth. So to jump, for example, rom-com has a pretty wide energetic musical bandwidth. Middle grade fiction has a very wide one. When we get into YA, that narrows. When we get into thriller and lit fic, it gets even more narrow. So when you're thinking about Jurassic Park, fundamentally Jurassic Park is a thriller, right? So we're in a genre that is not kind of it's not it's not playful. It's not like, ooh, yay, acting. It's not like doing David Copperfield or Winnie the Pooh. And so the performance needs to be very grounded, and that bandwidth for me does become very narrow, and that kind of pitch range focuses in. So what happens is, versus okay, so there's the weird scientist in the lab, right? There's the BD Wong plays in the thing, and so if you were doing it in a middle grade, it could be something like, "Well, Susan, what have we got here today for them to look at? Oh, this is a velociraptor. She's very interesting. No, they're all females. We make sure of that. We do it in the lab, right? So if you were doing middle grade, you'd be there. But if we were moving that into something like a lit fit space, it would be like, Susie, what do we have today? Oh, they're all females. You see, we separate them in the lab. For me, what makes it work is I bring the lens in even tighter. So I moved from a wide shot into a very tight shot. And those, oh, literally, he just brought it to me. So,
What a
yeah,
good guy.
yeah, for, oh, so, uh, yeah. Well, so this is like, let's do not Scott Bricky. Well, as you can imagine, it's important that they not be able to breed. And whenever we faced a critical matter such as this, we designed redundant systems. They're always arranged at least two control procedures. In this case, there are two independent reasons why the animals can't breed. First of all, they're sterile, because we irradiate them with X-rays. So that I'm literally fucking cold reading this, right?
Mhm.
But then what we could do is move it into, well, as you can imagine, it's important that they're not able to breed. And whenever we're faced with critical matters such as this, we designed redundant systems. Do you see how what happens is that lens moves from medium shot to tight close up? And so I'm still doing something, but it's more my energy is changing than the voice is changing.
Right.
And when you're in thriller, when you're in lit fic, when you're in horror, when you're in certain kinds of maybe dystopian sci-fi, that the more hyper naturalistic the cinematography of the movie version would be, right?
Right.
Very often I think of it as like the contrast level in a movie. If we're in Technicolor, then if we're in vivid Technicolor, like if we're kind of singing in the rain, then that's going to be a very different energy than if you look at a Christopher Nolan movie and you're like, oh, well, I know what this is. When the darker the cinematography, the less contrast, the less color there would be in that final cinematic movie in your head.
Right.
That's telling you that bandwidth gets more narrow.
Now, here's the thing. Just this, you're so good at this stuff, you don't realize how difficult it is for people to differentiate between some of those things. Musicians do this all the time as well, where the difference between somebody who's been playing for 10 years versus somebody who's been playing for a year is very often these little subtle things. And my mom would hear it and go, I don't know, they sound about the same, and that's fine. It's only that when you're into the art of it and the science of it, and then it's all in the little details, and it's really cool that you have all these details two ways. They're in your head. You understand them. Number two, one of the things that I do find about performers, there's so many great performers that are horrible coaches, or and it's not because they're bad performers, but they've chunked this information down to a point where they're not thinking about how they got there and the details that they built up over the years. And
I I
right?
love the fact that you're saying that. I very often, when I'm listening to when I hear interviews with like golden voice narrators and the people at the very, very top of the game, I have to remind students, like Simon Vance says he doesn't prep,
Right.
right?
Right.
I just spent the weekend with Ray Porter, who's the nicest fucking man alive. Oh my God, he's such a teddy bear. But Ray doesn't prep a book.
Right.
He doesn't read the book.
Right.
He's the only narrator I've ever met in my life they openly say out loud, I don't read the book. And here's the thing. You're talking about Mozart sitting down and writing a symphony. They are savants, they are geniuses.
And
And when you hear them talk about the process, you have to recognize they've done 1,000 books.
right.
Their process when they did their first 5 books was not the same,
Right.
but also they are at such a high level that the rest of us have to work so much harder
Right.
to try and even begin to reach a fraction of that level of brilliance, that when they say, oh, this is a waste of time, don't do that. I think that makes people feel like shame, like, oh, maybe I'm bad, that I need to, highlight my script or whatever. No,
Right.
you're just not Meryl Streep and popped out of the womb like that.
Well,
Who is?
I call that there's a technical term for that, by the way, that you should know because you can use this with other people. It's NORMAL.
Does it stand for something?
NORMAL.
Oh, normal. Oh my
Normal.
God.
You're
I can't.
normal.
Yep,
I
I
mean,
read for a
really.
living.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
It's one of those things that that all of us, if you don't have the grounding in that already. So Ray Porter has done so many roles before he ever did books. He's done so much acting, and he's done so many books, that if he doesn't quote prep at this point, that does not give me permission as a new person, or somebody that's been in 5 years. I still consider that new. But
Yeah,
that doesn't say, oh, well, Ray doesn't prep. Well, I'm not going to prep either. It's like, Ray's done like multiple decades of prepping, and
exactly.
he's done cold reads. And also, actors do this thing all the time where they sit around with scripts and they do cold reads, and they try to do it to the best of their ability, while sight reading.
I love that you talked about cold reads because I think if anybody listening, if actors ever get a chance to take a cold read class, it is so helpful in this business because I remember when we were in school, our freshman acting teacher, Anna Stramacy, who was insane, but she made us learn to cold read. And she taught us that what you do if you're cold reading in an audition with a scene partner, right? Because the camera wants to see your eyes and see your face. So what she taught us was you grab a sentence from the text, you engage and deliver the text. And so what you learn to do is read almost in a cyclical way
Yep.
rather than word by word. And she taught us to grab a sentence at a time, and that is what you've got to do as a narrator. You have to know where the sentence is going. When I hear people that sound like they're reading, it's because they don't know what the end of the sentence is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can only act a complete thought. When we speak in real life, we don't necessarily know what the exact wording of the end of the thought is, but we know the end point that we're trying to get to. And a lot of narrators will be here and they'll be like, I walked to the store and they don't know that they don't know where the discovery and where the thrust of the thought is.
Right.
We got to narrate thought by thought, and cold reading is an amazing way to learn that. Hunter is asking if I teach single classes. Absolutely, I do coach one-on-one. If you go to www.actingforaudio.com, you'll find a way to reach me. You can also just email me at joel@joelfrumkin.com, FROO. But I'm super easy to find. But yes, I do kind of what I guess we in the industry call like spot coaching, like solving a specific problem, working on a specific demo. I've got to prep this book and I don't know this genre, that kind of thing. Working
Did,
on emotional bandwidth. Yeah, absolutely. Love to do that.
did I get this? Did I mess up this URL? I just took it off your. You see at the bottom of our screen there?
Yeah, you did get it wrong. It's acting for audio, not audiobooks.
Okay, let me fix that.
Actingforaudio.com. So, but yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And somebody's asking, how do you book classics? How do you book classics? First of all, you got to tell them you want to do classics. Um, Also, there are not that many of them out there that do them. And a lot of folks end up releasing them as public domain independent titles on their own because that's what they're passionate about and they want to do them as the project on their own volition. I've been very lucky. I've been hired by a lot of publishers to do them. I have a reputation as being that kind of guy. I am a character actor. I I love to create a kind of an audio drama experience when the text dictates that. And I'm somebody who tries to give every character a different voice. And when you're dealing with the classics, a lot of times it is that. And you end up with it's funny because on audiobooks at sea, I'm teaching a whole thing on classics with Karen Commons, and I'm doing a whole thing on performing classics. But what happens in classics is you end up with 4-page monologues in character from a random little supporting tiny character. So you've really got to be able to show them you can deliver a huge variety of character with authenticity, taking that character seriously, and with what I call elasticity to that character. Because you'll end up with characters that seem like little minor quirky voice character. Oh, like I'll just do a little throwaway. But then 200 pages later, they will have a heartbreaking monologue that's 3 pages long. So you have to you have to be able to create very bold characters that can live in an intimate lens for audiobooks and have flexibility as what I call performers. I call every character one of my performers in my repertory company. They have to have really good acting chops, not just be a voice,
Right.
and I think that's the thing. But it's tricky. And there are the people that they're going to go to first. They're going to go to Vance. They're going to go to Richard Armitage. They're going to go to those guys, a lot of the times. But let people know you love them. Show them you've got the goods to do that kind of work, and hopefully it comes to you. And I'll fight you for them. So
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, if most of the classics are going to go to somebody who is already well known for having the chops to do it. So if you want to do that, you have to build a portfolio that shows you have the chops to make that work. A classic's kind of a problem because you're going to be compared to every other. I don't want to do Jurassic Park. No, first, no one's hiring me to do this, but if you have to go and all of a sudden you got hired to do Jurassic Park, you're going to get compared to Scott Brick's performance. You're going to get compared to any other that has done that insanely well, and everybody knows the story in advance. Everybody's kind of got some voice, so you in their head. So you have to totally nail those things at a level that if I'm doing a story they've never heard of from an author that they don't know, they know the genre maybe. Well, then they don't already have all these preconceived notions about how that should be.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I mean, it sounds silly, but I find in general the people that get the work are classically trained,
okay.
right?
I
I
don't,
mean,
yeah.
again, Simon Vance is kind of his own weird, crazy story of
Yeah, but
savant
he started
brilliance.
early on. That's also a
Yeah,
differentiator that,
yeah, but like Richard Armitage is a classical actor. Patrick Stewart is a classical actor. Johnny Heller's Huck Finn. Johnny's a classical actor. Like they've got the chops. They've been on stage and know how to create bold character and then have studied how to bring that into an audio lens. So I think that when publishers see that you have theatrical training, they think of classics as theatrical,
right.
even though in audiobooks it is a much more cinematic experience. But they think of them as allowing a certain more colorful kind of performance that, say, they would not want from litfic. They think of it as a different kind of performer.
Yeah. So, hey, we have like 5 minutes here. What cool things do you have coming up over the next year or the next after? I mean, you have your cruise, but I'm assuming you have an extra 500 spots open on the cruise right now.
The boat is full. We
Okay.
are delighted that the boat is full. We will Audiobooks at Sea, which is audiobooks@sea.com, will go on sale for next year, and come join us. It's a hell of a frickin' party. And our lineup of coaches next year already, like we're building it, but we've already got people that my jaw is dropping that they said yes. I'm friggin' psyched. Um, Golden voices, and like amazing. We've got and so that'll go on sale April. You can always get on our mailing list. We do not spam you. We don't bug you. The same thing for Acting for Audio. That is open for enrollment now. The next class is in June, I believe. They're Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 7 o'clock at night. It's a 3-hour class, 15 weeks. And it is for people of all levels. I have people in classes that have an MFA in acting with rank beginners, and we work from where you are. And for people that have a background in acting, I've always said I wish I could go back and take freshman acting again. It is great to go back and revisit the foundations and reconnect to them as an adult. I mean, a lot of times when you're in freshman acting class, you're still a virgin. You haven't lived. You don't know what it means to be a human being in the world and suffer loss and connect to the
Right.
truth, so now, they find it often really great to go back and build that foundation even stronger. And they're up in class with people that haven't acted since high school or ever acted at all. And so that's open for enrollment now. Audiobooks at Sea, you can sign up for the mailing list. You can reach me, all the stuff. Um, VO Atlanta was super fun. I think it's a really great experience if you're a beginner narrator or you're an experienced narrator looking to get into other VO.
Right.
But at Audiobooks at Sea, we kind of are couching our content more at a TEDx kind of masterclass level. We even do, because of that, what I do on Audiobooks at Sea is I do like a 2-hour, 3-hour session with newbies for anybody who's got 15 books or less before the boat, before we leave. I'm doing it next week so that I can go over them. I can give them all the stuff that they would normally be afraid to ask in a room full of more experienced people. So we do like ACX and royalty share and do I prep and all that stuff so that they feel looked after when they come into this environment with, more experienced narrators.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Super cool. Super cool. And I have a cool story here. So we did a sound check this morning, and we do it before all the shows. And first off, Joel was so gracious to come on at the last minute, but he was hyper busy. So we only had maybe 12 minutes from the time we finished our sound check to the time we went live. And so what does he do? We turned off the cameras. He went and narrated and snuck in about 12 to, I mean, he has this little sliver of time. And what he did was he said, I'm going to get some work done and I'm going to take advantage. And what most people would have done is this. They would have gone, oh, I've got 12 minutes. Oh, that's not enough. I'm just going to go drink, have some iced tea or something and wait. He went and I could hear him just as the mic turns off. He's already reading and narrating and working on his book. And so I'm just super thankful that you took the time to be with us today when I know you already had a full day scheduled, and yet you said, I'll help you guys out. So thank you for
I
being here so much.
I
You're so
love you.
gracious.
You are the nicest man in this business. You are so kind. It was a joy to get to spend. Normally at New England, we literally are like ships in the night. We don't get to
Yeah.
talk to each other because everybody's talking to us. This has been a delight. I'm so grateful to you and Johnny for even thinking of me. I love him. We hope he gets better and gets his voice back because he literally sounds like a zombie right now.
He
It's
does.
terrifying. Um, and it's just been a thrill. So I hope everybody got something out of it, and it's been such a treat. Thank
Yeah,
you, Don, so
and we'll have
much.
you back, of course, when Johnny's here as well. And so for everybody, be sure to like this, be sure to comment. Comments after the show ends are so helpful, and you can share this. Go find the link in YouTube, share it across all the social media groups. If you found value in it and you think others will too, please share this for others. And as always, Johnny will be back next week. We've got a great show planned for them. And Joel, thank you very much for being here, as
And if you have
always.
and if you have questions about anything on the replay, message me,
Yeah,
DM
yeah,
me.
yeah. And also,
Not a
you can find
problem.
him on Facebook. You can find him all over. And I tried to put in every URL. You should find that in the stream of the chat so that if there's something that you missed, be sure to get a hold of Joel. Great guy, great coach,
Thank
super
you.
helpful in this business. I wish everybody was like him or more like him. So, all right. You have a fantastic day. We'll see you all next week.